Welcome to the Rethink Leadership podcast with me, Jeremy Blaine. I interview leaders, experts and business professionals from around the world who are bringing leadership principles and know-how into the digitally driven 21st century workplace, with focus firmly on the how-to rather than the what. Each episode is in aid of a charity chosen by my guests, and since 2020, we've made donations to over 80 global and local causes. For today's episode of the Rethink Leadership podcast, I welcome Gina Battye, the founder and CEO of the Psychological Safety Institute and author of The Authentic Organisation. Her mission is to create work environments where people work better together and thrive. She is a consultant for some of the world's biggest companies, providing strategic insights, accessible training, and practical tools for holistic culture change, all underpinned by psychological safety. We discuss Gina's book, getting to the heart of what makes authentic leaders tick, and how they create psychologically safe work environments where people thrive. This episode is in aid of Save the Children International, to which we've made a donation as a thank you to Gina for joining us. Gina, thanks very much for joining me. Please introduce yourself and your passion for building authentic, psychologically safe cultures everywhere.
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you. And thanks for having me, Jeremy. Great to be here with you. So my name's Gina Battye, CEO and founder of the Psychological Safety Institute. We use PSI for short. So if you ever hear me say PSI, I'm referring to the Institute. So my passion for psychological safety and authenticity started early on in my career, actually. I had two very different encounters with psychological safety that literally shaped everything that I do today. So let me take you back. Let me paint a bit of a scenario for you so you can get an idea of where I was at the time. So imagine this, right? I'm 22 years old, 4 foot 11 inches tall. Sadly, I haven't grown very much. And working with dangerous criminals. My workplace was hostile, it was aggressive, it was a nerve-wracking environment, as you can probably imagine. I was teaching people who had been involved in offences related to drugs, alcohol, violence, theft, sexual offences. From the very first day, my protection, safety and well-being were taken very seriously by my employer because it had to be. It could literally have been a matter of life or death. Now, I vividly remember this being tested to the limit one winter's night back in, I think it was 2004. So it was after work, I'd finished work. I was walking back to my car. I was followed by a dangerous man, which led to me being stalked for weeks. I wasn't able to go anywhere without a probation officer escorting me. I had my own personal bodyguards. You can imagine me, 4 foot 11, and these really tall, muscly guys following me everywhere. Now, thankfully, my employers created a work environment where I was physically, mentally, and psychologically safe. And that experience showed me just how crucial a safe work environment actually is. Roll on 2 years, I moved into teaching adults in the workplace for a college. Such a huge contrast, I can't even tell you. I didn't feel safe bringing my authentic self to work. So you see, I wasn't out in the workplace at the time. Gay woman, wasn't out. From the very first day, I felt uncomfortable with my manager. She was a dictator, she was controlling, she was manipulative, she lied, she abused her power. And sadly, I watched her bully my colleagues out of their roles. Now, I became her next target, where I experienced an intense period of bullying for being gay. Now, at the time, I didn't report it because I didn't want to out myself to the leadership team and to my colleagues. I really wanted to get into teaching in a further education college and kind of, go up the ladder a little bit. So I really didn't want to out myself to anybody. I did keep a log of incidents alongside evidence, and then a year later, it got to the point where enough was enough. It was affecting my physical health, it was affecting my mental health. I decided to report it. Now, I talk about this quite a lot on stages and stuff, and people always say, so what happened? What happened? Well, unfortunately, my manager was promoted, and I was told not to progress the case any further because it would highlight my sexual orientation to my colleagues. Exactly, right? So that's when I knew I had to leave and create something better. Now, back to when I was working with ex-offenders, I was there to teach them. But what actually happened was far more human. We talked a lot about their choices, their stories, what had shaped them, what had gone wrong along the way. And what struck me again and again was this. Beneath very different experiences, everyone wanted the same thing. And that was to feel safe and to belong. Two things, to feel safe and to belong. Now, over time, those conversations became the foundations of the work that I do today. So I tested, refined, and pressure tested what I was learning in real environments with real people facing real challenges. And what emerged wasn't theory, it was practical, human, and deeply effective. So I founded the Psychological Safety over 15 years ago, and since then I've worked with organisations around the world to help them build workplaces where people can genuinely thrive. Not by forcing behaviour change, but by changing the conditions people are working in. We're leaders in our field, we bring effective new approaches in the industry and deliver change at scale. And in essence, what we're doing is creating cultures where people work better together, empowering people with skills in self-awareness, communication and collaboration. You might have seen we've developed a significant body of intellectual property around psychological safety. We've got the 5 pillars, authentic self-process, the PSI culture framework, Lux, our diagnostic tool. And I would say that all of the things that I've worked on throughout the years have all come together through my book, The Authentic Organisation. But at its core, the work has always been about one thing, and that is creating environments where people don't have to wear armour to do good work, and where organisations benefit because of it, right? That's the whole point.
Yeah, so many things resonate here, and I'm furiously writing notes as you go going along.
Bless you.
I'm only just a little bit bigger than you. Story of my life.
I'm 5 foot in the morning. I'm just saying, I'm 5 foot in the morning, and then I shrink throughout the day, right?
Morning, right? Yeah. And what a story. And I think bullying in the workplace is one thing, but for being gay adds on to that, doesn't it? And it multiplies. It challenges your identity. It makes you keep things inside, like you're talking about. You're not so. It strikes me as a very 20th century way of doing business versus 21st century way, where we have much more enlightened organizations, and these kind of dinosaurs are an anachronism in that perspective, but they do still exist. But what I got out of there is that atomic unit of a person in work or in our communities is that need for safety and belonging. And if we got that as a foundation to build on, then you've built in that toolkit, and we're going to get into all of those behind it, because it's such an important part of it. And I understand personally the importance of the authenticity on one level, but particularly from a cultural perspective, that psychological safety of organizations and in communities wherever we are. So maybe before we get into the detail then, because many people will have different views of what psychological safety is or isn't. So what is your definition of psychological safety, and why is it so important, particularly for leaders and managers, to take note of these days?
Yeah, thank you for asking. I think it's a really good starting point to actually clarify what we mean by psychological safety. And at the Institute, we use a very different definition that people might not be aware of. So it's a great opportunity to share that. Thank you. So I guess where to start. Psychological safety is often described as encouraging people to speak up, to share ideas, to raise concerns, to challenge decisions. When I speak to a lot of organisations, that is the kind of the ballpark of their understanding, if you like, of what psychological safety is. Now, the logic seems sound. Okay, so if people feel safe, they'll speak up, right? And if they speak up, organisations avoid costly mistakes, improve decision-making, strengthen trust, all of that good stuff. So it sounds progressive, it feels responsible, but it's not psychological safety. A speak-up culture focuses on what people should do, all right? Psychological safety focuses on how safe it feels to actually do it. So at the Psychological Safety Institute, we define psychological safety like this. It's all about people feeling safe, comfortable, and confident. So safe to be themselves, comfortable in their interactions with colleagues, included and valued in their team and their wider organisation. I guess in its rawest form, how I like to think of it is it's an individual, moment-to-moment state shaped by environment, relationships, and context. So in other words, it's about how safe you feel in this moment with these people in this environment. Safety is subjective, it's contextual, and it's constantly shifting. Okay, so think about it right now with me. You might feel safe, comfortable, and confident. I know I'm making an assumption there, right? But just bear with me. Okay, so you might feel safe, comfortable, and confident right now. Now imagine your CEO walks into the room, or somebody much more senior than you, okay? Does that feeling change for you in that moment? Do you still feel safe, comfortable, and confident? Are you maybe a little less confident? Are you still able to be your authentic self in the room? Or has there been a slight shift? That's what we're talking about here. So, like I said, psychological safety is how safe you feel in this moment with these people in this environment. It's subjective, contextual, constantly shifting. And that distinction really matters actually because people don't decide to speak up in theory, they decide in real time. So, how do they make that decision? Well, this is the bit that I think is really quite interesting about all of this. So, every workplace interaction triggers a rapid unconscious risk assessment. In milliseconds, the brain scans for cues of safety or threat. And when those cues suggest risk, the body shifts into protection mode. So your attention narrows, people become more cautious, words feel harder to find. And this isn't a mindset problem, it's biology. So when the nervous system shifts into that self-protection mode, access to clear thinking, creativity, and collaboration drops. People don't stop caring, they just stop offering what doesn't feel safe to offer. And it's their nervous system protecting them. No amount of we encourage everyone to speak up kind of messaging that we often hear can actually override that nervous system that has learned it isn't safe to contribute. So this is why leaders and managers need to take note. If you have people experiencing Sunday night anxiety, centering themselves in meetings, or quietly disengaging, that's not a motivation problem, it's a safety problem, and it has real consequences. Your people, as we know, are your most powerful resource, and if they're only showing up with a fraction of themselves, imagine the impact that's having on decision making, innovation, performance, trust, all of those great things that we talk about. Now, I have a fundamental belief, right? And this is what drives me. I believe everyone has the right to feel safe at work. That belief drives everything that I do. And my ambition is to see psychological safety embedded into workplace legislation, not as a nice to have, but as a fundamental condition for healthy, high-performing organisations. Because when people feel safe, they think better, they work better, organisations perform better as a result. So it's a hugely important aspect to think about.
It is. Wow. And just imagine if
I
you
know, right?
think that through,
That
right?
was
And
there.
see psychological safety in legislation. But it makes so much sense, the safe, comfortable, and confident workplace. And well, any environment, like as you say, actually, not just a workplace, but
Yeah.
being a moving feast because it changes from environment to environment, situation to a situation. And what you really captured for me is the heart of it, which is, are you maintaining your ability to be authentic or not in those situations? And therefore, what's the impact on you and others throughout
Yeah.
that in that moment and then going forward?
Hmm.
For example, in the workplace, we're asking people to be empowered, do more, or go beyond, do all of these kind of things. But it's very difficult without this in place. So that how-to is the bridge between what you're talking about, what it is, and then
Yeah.
really, really engaging in a truly speak up organization where people feel that they can get down to the doing, can own the doing. I suppose it bridges the gap between that and ownership culture, actually, in some
Yeah.
ways. So tell us how the Psychological Safety Institute helps organizations and even communities, if you would like, everywhere to create cultures that thrive rather than merely survive. And also just kind of replaying, going back to why is that important for leaders and managers?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Yeah. And just to kind of follow up on something that you mentioned there, really, really important to note that, yes, psychological safety isn't just about the workplace, right? We all have a level of psychological safety in every single part of our lives, whether that's with your family members, in a social group, hobbies, whatever it might be, it's everywhere. But we've just kind of got used to hearing it in the work context. So thank you for picking that up. I think it's really important that people realise that. So more about the PSI. And how we create organizations and cultures that thrive. So, where to begin? Right, all right. So, at the Psychological Safety Institute, our work sits across three interconnected strands. So, everything we do is designed to, firstly, influence standards, secondly, upskill people, and third, to transform workplace culture from the inside out. So, I'll talk very briefly about all three so you get an idea of the kind of thing that we do. So, first of all, we work at a systems and a standards level. So we're committed to driving change at scale across industries, organisations, and ultimately legislation as well. We carry out research in close collaboration with the University of Cambridge, and we're building a global evidence base on psychological safety using Lux, which is our purpose-built diagnostic tool. So by collecting and analysing real organisational data, we're creating a clear picture of the current state of psychological safety in workplaces worldwide. And then we're using that insight to influence how organisations think, lead and operate. So that's the kind of standards level. Second, we upskill people to lead and embed change. So our training programs are designed for those who want to understand psychological safety fully and make it work in practice. So we take people beyond the whole speak up culture. Our flagship Champions program is an in-depth, industry-leading psychological safety course that equips people to influence and embed psychological safety across organisations. CPD accredited, attracts leaders, consultants, HR professionals and change agents from around the world. So that's one of our programs. The second one that we're going to be launching very soon, and this is the first time I've talked about it, so I'm very excited about this. I know, right? We're soon going to be launching our Psychological Safety First Aiders program. So this recognises that culture isn't shaped in policies, it's shaped in everyday moments in the workplace, right? So our first aiders are trained to support people in real-time interactions, helping to reduce friction and strengthen working relationships before issues escalate. So they're kind of like the first line of support within an organisation, right? Third thing that we do is transform business cultures from within. So this is where the work becomes deeply practical. Our culture change programs don't start with assumptions or off-the-shelf solutions. They start with understanding. So I personally go and spend time inside an organisation, getting to know the people, the pressures, the reality of how work gets done without any judgment. I use a piece of our intellectual property to help me to diagnose the issues. It's called the PSI Culture Framework. So I use that to begin that diagnosis process. It might also involve reviewing existing data or using Lux to measure psychological safety across the organisation. Through leadership workshops, team sessions, observations, interviews, that kind of thing, we start to identify the root causes of what's really going on. And I use that 5 levels of culture framework to understand where safety has been supported or undermined. It's quite technical from my point of view, but what you'd see of me is sitting, watching, asking lots of questions, really delving in, figuring out what's going on. So from there, we give organisations a clear picture of their current culture and psychological safety landscape, along with a tailored practical action plan. It isn't about quick fixes, and we make sure that we're very clear about that. It's about sustainable change. So we then lead a culture change programme within the organisation, all underpinned by psychological safety. Looks very different for each organisation. It might be a mix of things like holistic training, targeted interventions, such as leadership workshops, e-learning, online learning, toolkits, journals, consultancy, exec coaching, train the trainer programs, small group interventions. Literally, it could be anything at that point. It just depends on how it goes when we get in there. But very simply, the aim is to get people working better together, quickly and sustainably. And if something isn't working, we don't paper over it. We find that root cause, and then we give the organisations the tools, the skills and the confidence to build healthier, happier cultures, all underpinned by psychological safety. So people aren't just surviving work, but they're genuinely thriving in it. And we don't have any more of that Sunday night anxiety, right?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I don't know about you. I still get that twinge on a Sunday, and and I've got my own business, and it's pretty safe, I have to say. But I still get that. Or I don't know whether it's excitement. It might be excitement now rather than I'll go with that one. But I
feel
understand.
that. I
understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I particularly like your psychological safety first aiders. That reduction of friction, that proactive approach versus being reactive there, and the fact that you're research based within this, and you can get deep into the data that can diagnose what's happening for the good or the bad or the ugly in the organization, and actually start to do something about it over time. Like you say, it's not a quick fix in here.
Yeah.
So there was another component of this that I just want to come back to,
Mm,
that we talked about at the beginning. And you write about this actually in your book, The Authentic Organization, and congratulations for that book.
thank
An
you very
excellent
much.
book. And for those listening, where can you get hold of that?
Anywhere you can buy books,
Yeah,
basically. It's everywhere,
great.
apparently. Well,
Excellent. So
apparently
this
it's everywhere.
we have a worldwide audience on this. So go to your Amazon
Fantastic.
or your
Yeah,
Barnes and
Barnes and
Noble, wherever it
Noble
is.
or
Great.
Waterstones or whatever. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Fantastic. The Authentic Organization by Gina Battye. That's
Yes,
Battye, by the way, for those
perfect. Yeah.
listening. So you write about authenticity sitting at the heart of
Mm.
this. So why does authenticity sit at the heart of psychologically safe businesses that you've worked with or that you are working with? And what are the benefits that arise from that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I believe that authenticity starts at the heart of our work. Sorry, authenticity sits at the heart of our work because it's where culture actually begins. So, in my experience, you can't create a psychologically safe organization by focusing on surface behaviors alone. You have to understand what's happening underneath. That's why, when working with businesses, I introduce our 5 levels of culture framework. And that's the lens we use to diagnose root causes in organization and design change that actually sticks. So culture to me doesn't operate in one place. It operates around 5 interconnected levels. And if even one is ignored, performance, trust, and safety, they just start to disappear. So the first level is personal culture. So this is about the individual, how people see themselves, their beliefs, their values, their emotional intelligence, sense of safety. Authenticity lives here, right? So it's at the very, very foundation of all the work that we do. It's about how people show up day to day. Do they feel safe enough to be themselves? Do they believe their voice matters? Are they aware of their impact on other people? If people don't feel safe internally, they're not going to feel safe contributing externally. So when I talk about authenticity, it's not about being authentic as most people would imagine. It's about being your authentic self. So being true to who you are. That's what I mean by being authentic. So it all starts with you, the personal culture. The second level is one-to-one culture. So this is where everyday interactions happen. So imagine between managers, team members, colleagues, peers. Trust is built or broken here. Are people really listening? Are conversations clear, respectful, and grounded in empathy? Without these strong one-to-one relationships, safety disappears very quickly. So I see these 5 levels building on each other, right? We've got the personal culture, which is all about me. The second level is about a one-on-one interaction. So imagine I'm now in a conversation with you in the workplace. We have a level of safety that exists between the two of us. Now imagine we bring in a third person or a team of people. This third level is what I call the team culture. So teams are where the day-to-day experience of work is shaped, right? So do people understand what's expected of them? Are roles and responsibilities clear? Do personalities complement each other or clash, potentially through misunderstandings? Do team members feel like they belong and that their strengths are recognised? So this is all about clarity of roles, healthy feedback, decision making, and belonging. We talked about that a little bit earlier. When teams lack structure, boundaries, or mutual respect, people then start to move into that self-protection mode. And that's where their fight or flight or freeze response kicks in. And they focus on surviving at work rather than contributing meaningfully. So, me and you, third person or a team of people, that's the team culture level. The fourth level is collaboration culture. So, imagine now we're not just us as a team, we're bringing in multiple teams. So, this is how teams work and interact with other teams. It's where silos, blame, and us and them thinking often show up, unfortunately. When collaboration breaks down, every interaction feels risky, right? Progress slows, frustration rises, trust fractures across the organisation. So it's really important that you think about the safety in those interactions between teams. Lastly, the fifth level is the organisational culture. So imagine we've zoomed right out now. This is the big picture. This is what leaders role model. What gets rewarded, what gets quietly tolerated, where the policies, systems, and behaviours genuinely align with their stated values. Let's face it, right? You can have the best values on the wall, but if leadership behaviour doesn't match, people feel the disconnect immediately and trust just collapses. Now, when even one of those 5 levels is neglected, culture starts to turn, right? Safety drops, connection weakens, and over time, toxicity creeps in layer by layer. If you ignore all 5, people will move fully into survival mode, and that's where fight or flight or freeze takes over. Creativity, curiosity, collaboration all start to disappear. You simply cannot expect people to thrive in a culture where they're barely surviving. And that is why authenticity matters so much. It all starts with that layer of authenticity. Now, for me, authenticity isn't a nice to have. It's the foundation of psychologically safe, high performing organizations. And that's why it's at the heart of everything that we do.
Right. And it makes so much sense to me, Gina, as well, as you're talking. And yeah, in fact, going right back to the beginning, the way you framed it resonates with me. Authenticity is where culture begins. And your 5 levels of culture framework, that almost like zooming out from self right through to the organization is what we see play out in organizations that do this well, do it badly, and you can start to see those pain points and those points where it really starts to kick in. Many of those leaders who are tuning in will likely be familiar with Amy Edmondson's obviously psychological safety and her scale of psychological safety. So how does your data correlate with Amy Edmondson's scale of psychological safety, and where are both best applied?
Great question. Simple answer, it doesn't. So let me explain. Lux is the first of its kind. It's an award-winning diagnostic tool for benchmarking psychological safety, all validated by the University of Cambridge. It was one of those ideas that came to me in the shower. You know those great ideas you have, right? It was one of those. You can imagine. It's taken us a good few years to get to the point where we are today. In terms of the tool, let me tell you a little bit about it. It's customized to each organization and it looks beneath the surface. So it uncovers individual, communication, and team dynamics through our 5 pillars, which are self, social, collaboration, curiosity, and creativity. It's tied to those 5 levels of culture that I talked about a little bit earlier on. The survey can be rolled out across an entire workforce, whether that's one office or a global organization. And the data doesn't just tell you whether psychological safety exists. It tells you where, how, and why it shows up or doesn't. And most importantly, it provides detailed insights and practical recommendations so leaders know exactly where to focus their efforts to create an environment where people and teams can truly thrive. In terms of Amy Edmondson, Amy's approach to psychological safety is fundamentally theoretical and academic. It was designed as a research instrument, offering a high-level indicator of perceived safety within a team at a moment in time. Her scale was never intended to diagnose organisational conditions, guide any sort of interventions, or support large-scale practical implementation. Lux was built specifically to do what Amy's scale cannot. It's a diagnostic system, not a sentiment score. So by measuring psychological safety through the 5 pillars, Lux identifies the drivers of safety, not just the presence or absence of it. This makes Lux the tool organisations use when they want to measure psychological safety properly, they want to benchmark it meaningfully and embed it sustainably across an entire business rather than simply assess it, right? So Amy Edmondson's scale tells you if psychological safety might exist. Lux tells you why it does or doesn't and exactly what to do about it. And that's the difference between measurement for research and measurement for real organisational change.
Oh, great response on that. And
thank you.
And having experience with Amy Edmondson's tools and writings and articles, I understand that theoretical point that you're making about it, and the fact that you're getting a point in time sentiment score around how do I feel, how negative, positive do I feel, how safe or not do I feel in those moments, without going particularly deeper into what organizations want, which is the how-to, which is what Lux does, where you're going into the why and what to do about it as well. So that all important how-to beyond it as well. So here's the follow-up, which is the $64,000 question, because we've got a lot of people tuning in here who are kicking off this new season, let's say, or this new year, thinking about how do we manage our people better, how do we become one as an organization, but how do I do it as a leader and manager more authentically? So how do those tuning in start this process? By getting the balance right in psychological safe structures between supervision, support, and empowerment? And if they don't get it right, what's the risk?
Wow, $1 million question, right? Okay. I guess the starting point for me is always about you as an individual, right? If we go back to the first level, it's all about personal culture. So it's being more self-aware. It's about raising your emotional intelligence. It's about knowing what you believe, what you value, all of that kind of good stuff. But also understanding who you are and how you're showing up in the work environment. So there's a piece of work there, I believe, for all people in every organization, not just leaders and managers, everybody, to actually think about those kind of questions and to raise their awareness. Now, going back to you said about getting the right balance between supervision, support, and empowerment, I think the word was that you used. So, this is where authenticity is often misunderstood. And I just want to touch upon this a little bit. So, the authentic self isn't about being unfiltered or bringing everything into the workplace. I often get feedback that leaders come to me and say, look, Gina, we can be our authentic self because that opens us up to getting people, behaving in certain ways or doing certain things and opening the floodgates for bad behavior, basically. And I often say, look, it's not about that, right? It's not about being unfiltered or giving everybody the permission to bring every single thing that they have into the workplace. It's about self-awareness, it's about choice and intentionality. Really important to recognize that. So we're not giving everybody the free rein to come in and do what they want. We're actually saying, bring your authentic self to the workplace, but be aware, make sure you're making the right choices. Are you bringing the right parts of yourselves to the right bits in this conversation? Let me give you a practical example of that, right? So I told you earlier that I'm a gay woman. I often get asked to travel to countries that are actually not safe for me to go to. Okay. So when I'm having conversations with those organizations, I've got to take care of my own personal safety, right? So I've got to be asking questions like, okay, what is appropriate for me to disclose here? What should I be talking about with these people? What shouldn't I be talking about? What could get me in trouble? Those kind of questions. Now, I know this is a very real practical example of a physical safety thing, but, I think it stands for all situations in a workplace, right? So there's certain contexts where you wouldn't bring absolutely every single part of who you are to that conversation, to that situation. And it's about being aware of what those parameters are within certain conditions, right? So that's what I mean when I talk about self-awareness, choice, and intentionality, being aware of what's going on around you as well. So in psychologically safe structures, going back to this supervision element, leaders don't remove supervision or standards. They change how they apply them. So supervision becomes clearer rather than tighter. Support becomes responsive rather than rescuing. And empowerment becomes deliberate rather than hands-off. And when leaders develop their own intrapersonal awareness, they're better able to regulate themselves, understand their impact, read context. That allows them to hold people to account without control and to empower people without abandoning responsibility. Authenticity done well actually strengthens leadership authority. It creates alignment between values, behaviour, and expectations. Leaders can say, look, here's the outcome we need, here's where you've got autonomy, and here's where I'll stay involved. And that clarity is what makes bold empowerment safe. The balance is achieved when authenticity is treated as a capability, not a personality trait, right? So leaders create conditions where people have choice over what they share, understand the expectations, and feel safe enough internally and externally to contribute fully. And that's when psychological safety supports performance rather than competing with it. Authenticity doesn't dilute leadership. It shouldn't. It should sharpen it because people perform best when expectations are clear, boundaries are respected, and they don't have to wear unnecessary armour to do that good work.
Yeah, that's often missed though in conversations around authenticity, around the which is but have strong self-awareness,
Yeah.
but make the right choices, but be intentional in the right ways for you,
Absolutely.
for the one-to-one, for your team, for the organization, as we go out in that flower of the levels of culture that you're talking about. Gosh, I mean, I could talk about this all day, Gina.
Me too, as you can
Articulate,
tell. I'm sorry. I love my
insightful.
work. It's all good.
Yeah, I mean, it's great and it clearly useful, clearly actionable. The way that you explain it shows the deep expertise that you have and how you've taken something that we know to a level where it becomes practical,
Mm.
um, entirely actionable in the right ways as well, while kind of busting the myths around it too, which is
Yeah,
what
yeah.
I love, because that can also get in the way. So, where do people find out more and connect with you to continue the conversation?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Well, I guess main place, visit the website to find out more about our work or to read more about psychological safety in our articles. I write articles every month. Some are great, some are a bit weird and wacky, but all good, I promise you. You can find us at thepsi.global. So it's thepsi.global. In terms of personally, we're also active on LinkedIn through the Psychological Safety Institute page and my personal page. Just search for Gina Battye. I'd be happy to connect. If anybody's got any questions, feel free to ask them on there. You can reach out to me on direct message if you like. Happy to answer anything that you have. And thank you so much, Jeremy, for the opportunity to chat with you today. It's been
No,
great.
well, thank you. And so do look out and do connect with Gina and find those articles, the insightful ones and the weird ones, which
I
I'm
think
now
you'll like the
intrigued
weird
at as
ones.
well.
You're going to like those weird ones,
Yeah.
trust me.
But Gina Battye, all for me, it just ends for me to say thank you very much for joining me and for kicking off this season with such an important topic. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Rethink Leadership podcast with me, Jeremy Blaine. Please like, comment and support us on your favourite platform and subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch as well as listen to each episode.